Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great. Today I want to share with you 3 things to look for when you're out shooting that I think will take your photos to the next level. These 3 tips can be applied to any style of photography, so whether or not you're a street photographer, a travel photographer, or even a landscape photographer, I think these tips are really going to benefit you. Being a photographer is quite overwhelming sometimes to see how much great work is being put out there, and I'm sure you might feel the same, so I think it's really important to try new things and figure out ways to try and make your work stand out a little bit more. Obviously, if you're enjoying what you're doing and you keep doing that, the right people are going to come find you, but I think these 3 tips are going to benefit not only your portfolio, but also the way you go out and take photos. So to kick things off, the first tip would be to look for colors. Now this may sound broad, but I think this is a really powerful mindset to get into when you're actually out shooting. Being on the active lookout for color and different colors in your scene is not only going to make you a better photographer, but are also going to give you images that are a lot more thoughtful. You may have heard about color theory before, and I know a lot of photographers throw that word out there, but if you get the chance, I'll leave a link below and you should go do a little bit of reading on what color theory is. I'm not going to dive into it too much today, but it's important for us to know how these theories can apply to photography. What it's really about is color harmony and how different combinations of color can work together to help you create a better looking image. I wouldn't suggest you need to become an expert on it all, but learning the difference between complementary colors and monochromatic colors and stuff like that is really going to help inform you when you're out shooting. For example, a complementary color are colors on the opposite sides of the color spectrum. And complementary colors, when photographed together, complement each other and make the photos look a lot more pleasing. I guess it's implied in the name, but when you're actually out shooting, you can start to look for colors that match up. For example, if you shoot on the coast a lot, knowing that oranges and blues are complementary colors, you can go out at sunset and try photograph that kind of look. Another thing to take away from color theory are different variations of the same shade. So you could be out shooting and you could see a lot of colors that look quite similar together. So framing them up together really leads to that pleasing image that we're after. Here's an example of a photo I took a few months ago. You can see a surfer going out into the water and you can see the blues of his surfboard in particular, along with the ocean and the sky really working together nicely with the oranges of the sand, his skin and the horizon. The blues and the oranges are working really well together here and it really makes for a much more pleasing image. If I was to go into Lightroom and change the color of his surfboard to green, you can instantly notice that this photo isn't as pleasing to the eye. Obviously the photo is the exact same, the framing, the exposure, even the cropping, but you can really tell that with this change in the color, it's not as pleasing to the eye as the original. This is just a little tip to apply when you're out shooting because it's going to make a big difference when it comes to editing. Speaking of editing, you can definitely apply the theories of color we're talking about to the way you edit your images. If you take this photo for example, I've got my model walking down this cliff face and we were actually photographing the tent strapped to his bag. Now the tent is a green bag and he was walking alongside the cliff. Now I intentionally worked a lot with the hue and saturation sliders to make sure that the greens of the cliff matched up with the greens of the bag. I could have left the grass a bit brown and orange the way it is down there, but by pushing them more towards the green, the image overall works a lot better together. The last thing about color is super simple and has nothing to do with color theory, and it's to just look for pops of color when you're out shooting. A little pop of color here and there in your frames can really make a massive difference when it comes to grabbing your viewer's attention and also telling a little bit more of a story. So you don't need to be so technical when you're out shooting and only look for complementary colors, but if you do see a bit of color in a scene, be sure to capture that. The second tip that I think is going to help take your photos to the next level is to look for actions when you're out shooting. When I say look for actions, I mean try photograph people and your subjects doing things within their environment. Whether it be a surfer catching a wave, a skateboarder riding down the street, or even someone making a coffee, this is going to give your viewer a lot more context about the scene and even let you tell a better story. Bringing your viewers along and inviting them into the place you're shooting is a great way to get them involved and take your photos to that next level because it allows them to kind of see what's going on through your eyes. Here's an example of a recent photo I took where I did kind of focus on this action. So on this street right near my house, there's this old Mercedes-Benz that's always parked up there, and I went on a little photo walk a few months ago and I snapped this photo. This gentleman was in and out of the house and I could have easily snapped a photo of him not in the frame, but by waiting a little bit longer for him to put his head back into the bonnet, I got this really cool photo that I wouldn't have got if I wasn't looking for an action. Photo without him would have been technically great, the light would have been the same, I would have framed it up nicely and it would have been a cool car with the bonnet open, but by having someone in it gave the viewer a little bit of context and also the photo overall a little bit more humor and a bit more enjoyment. Another example of photographing in action is this photo here. So I took this photo years ago back in Greece and we were out on a boat ride and I was actually photographing where we were going, but quickly I turned back around and photographed our skipper who was driving us around. If I had kept photographing the front, I would have got the same images over and over, but by turning around, I actually captured one of my most favorite images ever, and it was really just to showcase this action and where we were actually going. Having this person in this scene made for a much more powerful image than just the front of the boat, and I think this is something that you should really take to your images when you're next out shooting. Capturing actions is a great way to show context and in turn a great way to tell more stories. So this is another great tip that I think you should apply to help elevate your photos. The final tip is to look for street portraits. Now, I've titled this last thing street portraits, but this could really be portraits of anybody. You could be out on the beach, you could be anywhere really, but it's mainly about capturing photos of people. The previous tip was about actions and capturing people doing things, but this last tip is about capturing portraits and getting over that daunting fear of actually asking someone to take their photo. Capturing a portrait of someone, whether it be a classic 50mm or even an environmental portrait, is going to be super powerful in your sets and your portfolio. It not only gives your viewers context, but it also gives your viewers an idea of who the people are in the place you're photographing. The best way to ask someone for their photo is to approach them with a smile and have your camera in hand and say, hey, can I please take your photo? Explain you're a photographer, even show them your portfolio or Instagram, and 90% of the time these people are going to say yes. If they are part of that 10% they do say no, just say thanks for your time and get moving on. But for the 90% that do say yes, they're really going to just be flattered that you've asked. Be sure to grab their email so you can send them their photo, but ultimately just be really respectful of the whole thing because you are getting a really powerful image out of this whole experience. For example, when I was down in Esperance with my friend Brett, we came across this guy who was actually out surfing on his own, and when I saw the whole scene and who he was, I really wanted to go take his photo. I walked up to him, I said, hey mate, can I please take your photo? And he was so enthralled and so stoked that he even posed in different spots for me. Obviously, you're not going to get this with everyone, and if they're in a rush, you shouldn't expect them to, but if you are lucky enough to ask the right person, they're going to really do you a solid and help out getting a great photo. Overall, portraits at their core are the best way to tell stories. They're the people that are in them, in their place, that are going to make these stories stick out. And ultimately, if you can tell better stories, your photos really are going to level up. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and you took away something from these 3 tips. If you do think that I missed out on anything, be sure to leave them in the comments so we can all see them. But otherwise, guys, I really appreciate you watching this video and I'll see you in the next one.